You sound as though you're feeling the pressure.
I'm not feeling the pressure, no. You cannot put pressure on me. No chance.
How's man talk about pressure? I don't feel pressure. Send a text on the chat line, give out some testers. Then back to my leisure. I got bro to the end card, that's my brother. That's my brother, that's my brother. I ain't got no gun, but if I cop that dots, bury it like treasure. Ayy, born in the east side, could've been a daily offender. Crazy extender. Might see me in the west with the gunners, or see me with Cahill like Arsene Wenger.
Welcome. Thank you for joining me to hear about why you'll never get that Jeffery Epstein Files, the real Jeffery Epstein Files. So without further ado, it's This Week in Tyranny, episode 117. I am your host, Conrad Brogus. Today is March 1st, 2025. I used to say it's the most hardcore news show on earth. I think it's the most misunderstood show on the planet, is what I was thinking the last few days. I was thinking every week I'd give like the absolute blueprint for how to become a deadly force in this fight for a better world. And I thought that it just floats out there. I do this show every week, it dissipates, and then nothing comes of it, right? But then I thought maybe that's not the case. You know, people do listen to me, and I have a small yet unique and strong audience that I'm really thankful for. I am. People do listen, and I got nothing to complain about. So maybe it's not that I'm misunderstood. Maybe it's the host of the show who misunderstands. By which I mean, I tend to take things harshly when I come across them. That has to do not only with the topic we're talking about, but kind of like my, I say this a lot, like, there's me and then there's the show, and then they kind of overlap, right? I try to be objective, but then it's also like, it's also mine, so I'm honest about like me as well. What else? I don't handle being overlooked very well. I'm not very good at that. I'm not very good at taking too much criticism, and I tend to respond to that with like a me against the world outlook. It's been me against the world since like my first video. This is what I thought. You know, I'm just gonna do this because I just can't be a coward anymore. I gotta like get up there and tell people about what I know at least, right? I'm not going out quietly. I say all this right off the top because the topic of this episode is about childhood. Okay? The problem I just described is a child's problem. Like, that's a child's predicament. Being ignored, then being heard about being ignored, and then you lash out, acting out. It's the behavior of a child. So, if I can see child-level errors in my own cognitive, perceptual behavior patterns, then what the fuck is the rest of the world? What kind of shape are they in? Is what I was thinking. This is all gonna intersect with Jeffrey Epstein. I kind of just gotta set the whole thing up, because I'm gonna talk about what's important, but then you gotta tie it into your life. Otherwise, it's just another fucking YouTube video, and my studio is not nearly nice enough to just be another video and collect advertising revenue, right? So I got to give you substance here, and I got to make it make sense. And the goal is always to do something that hasn't been done before. That's the point, to be unique. That used to be what this platform is all about. And now 20 years later, it's very cookie cutter, one size fits all, right? The shit that's out here. So back to the predicament of a child. A traumatized child, because all the problems and issues of humans everywhere, they're children's problems with just added layers on top of it, right? A more accurate description of that would be acquired trauma is what we deal with, and that's the cause of suffering in this world. It's not that it necessarily everybody was fucked up as kids. It doesn't necessarily have to happen exclusively during your childhood. Trauma could happen at any age, in any situation. But it is first and foremost that upbringing, the love as a child, attachment, the security, attention. We're talking about like from an infant to your early childhood. That's your protection in the future against being hurt by others and damaged by others. And that's the resistance factor right there. It's like the immune system layer of defense. Now, I'm not saying that I didn't have that. Everybody had different layers of that. And people are different, so is really not the point. I'm not saying I'm unique or special in having some things to deal with that are difficult, because everybody has these things, right? So there's a balance here, right? But it's important, and I'm not going to hide from it, and it's a personal shout out I want to give to Dr. Dustin Plattner, who was one of the presenters who I had the honor to present alongside with. He gave a presentation about transforming our narcissistic wounds into self-love, I believe is the title. So he's a psychologist, and he made a great presentation basically about, parental childhood trauma being at the root of then being in a world where people are drawn to these systems of control, and they are running from the truth and not actually loving themselves. They actually are. They keep seeking that kind of attention, fulfillment, care, nourishment, and nurturing that was not provided to them at some point. And that guy is a big factor of the direction of this show this week, and what I plan on moving forward with This Week in Tyranny, because it's like a change. So this is the first This Week in Tyranny after the FUNL 4 conference, which was great. I thought it was a smashing success. I'll thank everyone again. It was great. It was so cool. But after that, on the Monday after, I've had like a hangover. I've just been resetting this week, just like reassess what I'm doing. Then I ended up working a lot this week, like, uncharacteristically, like, 12, 11 hours, not every day. But then I had to go to the dentist one day. Then I had to do something else another day. Really didn't spend a lot of time resting at all. And then it was actual physical work, which I like. But it takes a toll, your back and your muscles and everything. Point is, worked hard, not a lot of spare time. So in the meantime, whenever I do get some spare time, I'm reassessing where this show is, what I want to do with it, where I am in my life. So I look through the news, as I usually do, seeing what's going on. Plenty of stories that look like tyranny to me, and I could easily roll with them. Speaking of rolling with them, I'm noticing I'm getting a glitch. I'm going to figure that out. I tried to figure out this week. Hey, it's an ongoing battle. Yeah, hopefully that doesn't distract you too much. I thought maybe it would be a nice like retro thing, like the signal is getting interrupted, like we're in the foxholes here, So plenty of stories that look like tyranny. But what am I going to do? Am I going to get up here and talk about Trump meeting with Zelensky and that whole thing with J.D. Vance in the Oval Office? I saw it. It was so clownish and childish. But is it really a story? Is it really something to talk about? Does it affect our lives? These are reality TV show moments. And it's a meme politics. Thank you to Ryan Christian for the term. It's meme politics. And it's just like reality TV show, but it's in your government now. Are these stories? There are no eggs on the shelves. Okay, we had some deportations, maybe even 10,000. That's not something to scoff at, but had some deportations. Executive orders got written. Hundreds of $1 million pledged to Stargate and all that, right? The bird flu vaccine. But really, that's all it is. It's still just talk and text is all that's happening. And I've been loud as hell about that tyranny that can happen under the current political climate. So I have talked about the politics. But it's still all abstract, and it's just bullshit illusion. Politics really doesn't affect you on a day-to-day basis. What happens to children does, because what happened to you and me as a child, that definitely fucking does. And then these are the daily patterns and struggles that we all deal with. That's why that's the story. Okay. and we get to talk about the Epstein Files as well, because that is in the news as well. That's right up there. What set all this off for me is seeing that the Epstein Files were released. Some of them, right? The first phase of them. It was released by Attorney General Pamela Bondi and the FBI. And of course, that's the headline, but the headlines are even saying that this was overblown, this was underwhelming, anticlimactic, it was a bit of a letdown. And that's because these files that they released that were supposed to break, that was supposed to take off this veil of secrecy, it was stuff that was already released, the flight logs, and what I find most important, the contact list. Jeffrey Epstein's list of contacts, which came out heavily redacted with only the names showing, and then big black squares where all the numbers and addresses are. But of course the numbers and addresses were already online, and it's all at epsteinsblackbook.com. You can go to epsteinsblackbook.com and see all this. And you can see his contacts. You can see Andrew Cuomo, former New York governor, right? He has a contact of RFK Jr., Robert Kennedy, along with his wife, Mary Richardson, who committed suicide 2 years after RFK Jr. filed for divorce with her. And he actually won custody of the children. How often does that happen? Father wins custody. And then Mary Richardson, his wife, was close friends with Kerry Kennedy. She was at Kerry Kennedy's wedding, where she got married to Andrew Cuomo, the New York governor. Interesting little cross reference right there with the Kennedys and that. Untimely suicides. It's always interesting, that type of stuff. Of course, she made all these allegations about him doing all this stuff. It's not really for me to paint anybody out as a bad guy, but it is what it is. Another contact, a much worse guy than RFK Jr., certainly, is Henry Kissinger. One of these advisors these kind of advisors who run the president. The president switches, they still run shit. He was running shit after, under Nixon and under Ford. Henry Kissinger being the Secretary of State, and played a big role, regardless of what his title says he did. He made big decisions. He also has Evelyn de Rothschild. He has a Rothschild banker, and Evelyn de Rothschild died in 2022, recently. And just last month, several women came out saying that Evelyn Rothschild sexually assaulted them long ago, in the 90s. So that's that kind of company. Plenty of other CEOs, politicians, you name it. It was in that book. But let's take a step back here with this Epstein thing. Jeffrey Epstein was a billionaire banker who liked young girls. And he had an island where he would offer them to his friends, to partners, to people he knows. That's what we're talking about here, right? He was convicted of this, and he died in 2019 in a jail cell. He was hung in a jail cell, okay? Alleged suicide. It was revealed later that he had cameras all over the place, all over his properties, especially in the bedrooms and in the bathrooms where you usually wouldn't have cameras. You had this in order to have the footage of the people, the politicians, the administrators, the CEOs, engaging in this type of behavior for the blackmail and the leverage. Okay, this has kind of become understood. People know this. Okay, so you're probably not new to that information, but it's just a refresher. This is what he was doing, and he was doing it to have leverage on these people. And yes, it was a human trafficking ring, an elite pedophile human trafficking ring. Factually, that is correct. But what I'm getting at is that's not the real thing. That's not the real thing that goes on in these circles. But it has become sort of understood that leverage and connections, networking, that's what's valuable in the circles of the wealthy and powerful. And that's true, so people get some of it. They get that there's pedophilia at high levels, but it's misunderstood. And it's not misunderstood by accident. Because in my view, Epstein was a false flag from start to finish. Start to finish. From his accusation to trial, to conviction, to his death. 5 years ago, it was like a calling card of the truth movement to say Epstein didn't kill himself, which meant that, of course, the systemic cover-up of elite pedophilia, it would ensure that somebody involved in that network, he would not be allowed to talk, to implicate the higher-ups, right, to actually expose how it works. And some people understood that Jeffrey Epstein was always small potatoes in the network. And that's cheers and warm regards to Mark Passio, wherever you may be. And this is who said this at the time. Epstein was absolutely involved and connected. He was rich, he was powerful and all this. But this is really low-level behavior. They let a lot of these people kind of let loose and have their own little corner. They have their thing that they like to do, so they let them do it. But this is not a big player in the network. And I don't think people understand just what Jeffrey Epstein was. And to explain that, I'm going to have to invoke a concept that I've mentioned several times. It's the Occult Web of Control, which, by the way, I have to do that presentation, and I will. After presenting at the FUNL conference, I thought, well, I got to do another one. And I got to do this Occult Web of Control because I kind of saw how many people care about this information, and they need to see that, But first, I'm going to finish up my point. Jeffrey Epstein's case, it turns people away from the real child abuse, the real pedophilia dynamic in the world. Okay? It points them away from correctly identifying the authority structure in the world. In other words, the elites. What they really do and why. Because in the Epstein dynamic, we're talking about connected men with teenage girls for sexual activity. Not to downplay that, okay? It's not to make comparisons. I'm not saying that's nothing. But it takes the attention away from the SRA angle. SRA is Satanic Ritual Abuse, which is boys and girls of all ages, from birth all the way through to adulthood, a life of slavery. Not just sexual activity, but physical, mental, and spiritual programming and training systematically, often by their parents, and living constantly in a way that fractures their mind, okay? Mind controls them to inflict really the greatest amount of trauma possible without completely incapacitating the person. It really is to incapacitate them in a way that their mind could be fractured. And this has been talked about before, but it is a whole different level, this stuff. And it gets lost because Epstein is the thing, and people think that's what it is. 3 years before the Epstein thing, actually, where the Podesta emails leaking, that was kind of the first domino. And the Podesta emails were, John Podesta was Hillary Clinton's campaign director, and he had his emails leaked from his laptop. And I don't know this for certain, right? Again, I don't know, but I think the Podesta emails leaking, that wasn't planned or coordinated. It could be, but the reason I say it wasn't is that right after the Podesta emails came out, which in the Podesta emails, this thing came out of using kind of like semi-coded language, like we're going to have a pizza party. They had the pizza there, but they brought cheese instead. A couple of things that seemed like they were talking about having children there and using that as a code word. Because things like, oh, we're going to enjoy it so much. And then there was another email that listed like numbers, like names of people, and like 11, 9, and 7 as their ages for like a heated pool party. So there are a couple things in those emails. Again, it's just text on the screen, right? So who knows? But I think it wasn't planned. And I say that because immediately after those Podesta emails came out, it was covered up with Pizzagate. Pizzagate, everyone's heard of because they blew that the fuck up. And you can look it up now. And it's how the mainstream describes it. They describe it as a right-wing conspiracy theory, so on and so forth. They conflate it with a specific pizza place and saying that the claim was that Hillary Clinton is connected to that and she's trafficking. Of course, certain conservative hosts or just people in general didn't do that movement any favors. You wonder about them and where their allegiances are. But anyway, that is what they do. They blow it up, but that's not the thing. It's a misdirection. The propaganda structure is very malleable. Again, this is my personal view. I think one of the reasons why we got Pizzagate and we got Epstein is that the SRA whistleblowers, the people who formerly were in this lifelong systemic abuse, these people started becoming more numerous, more credible, and harder to deny. And I mean specifically Jay Parker and Nathan Reynolds. They are bad news for this network of people. They are really trouble. They slandered Kathy O'Brien and Bryce Taylor. I believe back in the 90s they came out. Shout out to them, much love and respect. They swept that under the rug. They did the regular demonization, They make them look crazy. They write bad things about them. They try to debunk them. So, of course, there's that, and they'll do that with all of us. But now, in the past few years, it's not so easy with Jay Parker and Mark Passio out there doing shows, speaking in a way where, as whistleblowers and former members of this worldwide dark occult network of control, they're not only showing their personal respective experiences running parallel to each other, but they're also intersecting and corroborating each other. You could see that it's real. Like, you can tell. Sometimes with a person's testimony, there are question marks. Okay, after there is enough of them, and these people, you could see how they behave over time. You know that they were telling the truth. So when that happens, then you get a problem on your hands, right? I'm not saying for sure that's the case. Maybe they didn't think that was a problem. Maybe that's not the reason. But definitely the amount of evidence that was out about just child traffickers, not drug cartels, not the Yakuza over there, but we're talking about like powerful people in English-speaking countries, all right? This kind of a system. More started coming out about that. And when shit like that happens, it's a known tactic that when the pressure gets too high on a suppressed subject, they turn the valve on suddenly, like real abruptly, and now a previously hidden topic that was just bubbling under the surface, it's now huge, it's bright, it's front and center. They make it famous. That's the strategy. But it's not going to be the actual subject that was being suppressed, but it's something similar enough that people think that smoke and this fire are one and the same, but they're not. They're similar enough, but they're different enough from each other that the actual subject, it never rises to the top. It never gets the eyeballs on it. It never gets the attention, and it never gets connected to the headline. Only the headline is left, and then the pressure that was over here, it just dissipates. And that's the strategy, and it's just simple psychology. But I think that's what sets This Week in Tyranny apart from these other shows, because you get the strategies, the blueprint, you get their techniques every week on every topic. This strategy, I think, is a brilliant strategy. I don't think people get it. Really, they don't get it playing out. I have a book here somewhere, Camouflage Through Limited Disclosure. Okay, sorry, I don't remember the author. Camouflage Through Limited Disclosure is a book about UFOs and about how all this UFO disclosure that's going to happen. That was a big topic, right? I think the Trump administration may have already released some of this, or they were definitely going to. Or maybe they even did while Biden was president. The point is the UFO disclosure is it seems like it's closer and closer. But you can put the cards out there, but if you're hiding 2 or 3 cards, then you might as well just have the cards in your pocket. You're still controlling. You're still not fully being transparent. It's just limited disclosure. And limited access is the best way to censor. Because if you just keep somebody away like this and don't let them see it, you can push back against that. You can, present an opposition to that. But when somebody says, here you go, opens the house to you and says you can look around and anything you want to look at, and you're looking and looking and looking, and really there's nobody being combative or defensive, but you're thinking there could be something else here. How would I know if it wasn't? That's what they do. Limited disclosure. The same thing with JFK. They could release the JFK documents, but what they're probably not going to tell you is that JFK, a year before he died, his Department of Justice ordered the American Zionist Coalition to register under FARA, which is the Foreign Agent Reporting Act. By the way, credit to Ryan Christian again for that information. He happened to be talking about this, and I thought it was interesting the way it relates. But then I looked it up, and this was actually 21st of November 1962 that the Department of Justice ordered, the main Israeli interest group, the American Zionist Coalition, was lobbying, millions of dollars back in those days money, back in 60s money, he basically said, hey, well, this is a different country, this is a foreign nation paying the American government, so they had the act where any foreign contributor had to register, right? Because this is in the times of the Cold War and after World War II, so it was we got to make sure we're not influenced by Russia type of a thing. Kind of the way like it's now China is the influence, same dynamic. But that was 11/21/1962, and 1 year and 1 day after 11/22/1963, he was killed. So symbolically, it's just a year and a day, 366 days later, he was assassinated. There's a definite Zionist connection there, right? By the way, AZC, it became AIPAC, the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee, which is basically this kind of lobbying group who spent, by the way, $100 million on the 2024 elections. So that in itself makes them a bigger contributor of money than like most nations, like countries. So it's big money we're talking about, right? But see, when we talk about who runs what, people get lost in all that because our geometry is all fucked up. Meaning we still think of this system like a pyramid, like the old school pyramid, and we just keep looking for the people at the top. And a lot of the people that find that information, like about Israel and Zionism, they think the Jews are at the top, and they're the first to tell you about it. It's the first topic of conversation. Like I'll say something and it'll be like, well, I notice you haven't talked about the Jews yet. Are you trying to avoid something? Like, that's kind of the way it is on the internet. So it's all they can talk about. Well, it's not that the pyramid is wrong. It's not wrong, but it's not complete. Like if you're seeing a still shot, like a frame of an animation set, you got to see the full picture. Take the eye on the top of the pyramid and swing it around 360 degrees, and you get this circle. And now we're talking about the Occult Web of Control. It's more of a toroidal field, okay? It's not a circle. It's a web. It's like a spider web. And then instead of getting closer to the top, like on the top of the pyramid, the Illuminati pyramid, the more powerful groups, they're like distributed around the center of the middle of this field. So the dark Zionists, the Jews, they're going to be somewhere close to the center. Yeah, very close. SRA cult programming, this kind of satanic ritual abuse stuff, and that real pedophilia out there, it's very, very, very close, okay? Now, Jeffrey Epstein and that sort of depravity and stuff that goes on, the control for and blackmail, it's there in the field, but much further away. It's kind of in the field where corporations and politicians overlap, right? It's still powerful people, but not really in there, not really where the deep dark shit happens, not really where it's blood in, blood out, meaning that there's that if you try to become a whistleblower, you might just get killed because you're close enough there. Whereas out here, you're still treated more so like a slave. You're on the outside. See, Jeffrey Epstein was rich, but he was a lot like a slave still. He was like an errand boy to get this stuff organized, to keep the outer layers in check. This is still not inner circle stuff. And the real Epstein Files, that they don't have Jeffrey Epstein's name on them, but that's what they would show. They would corroborate the claims of Jay Parker, Nathan Reynolds, Kathy O'Brien, and Bryce Taylor, and more. So the key thing about the Occult Web of Control is some of these groups have zero contact with some of these other groups, but they both play integral roles, but they wouldn't recognize each other. Not everybody sees how it all overlaps. It's not a hardcore hierarchical divide like a caste system where you have these people and then under them is this, and then they control the people under them. And then not all directives are coming down the same way. You got orders, you got payoffs, you got agreements under the table, you got understandings, and then you got pacts that are never spoken. These things that happen in the real ritual chambers, they never end up in emails. So the Podesta emails may have been true, right? Totally came out as true. Someone actually hacked it. The narrative is that the Russians hacker did it. Russian hacking was the whole thing. But assuming that's a 100% correct and not modified, this is still like a lot of these are people who are very sloppy and careless. Someone even said that in one of the emails. They said free ice cream is a very serious matter. We cannot just put a word like free in the subject line and advertise it. So it seemed like he was saying, hey, we should watch how we use these code words because it's suspicious, right? So these are all the links on the web, and you exert influence, like you're pulling the strings on the web, and the closer you are to the middle, the more your pull controls the rest of the field, the rest of the web. But the most important thing to remember about the Occult Web of Control is that it's empty in the middle. There is no single ruler. There's no single ruling family or group of ruling families. That's what maintains its strength. There is no central point to be able to remove. If there was a central point, it would have been overthrown already. This works because there is no king to decapitate. It's like a hurricane with the eye in the middle. And you never know where the eye is because it's constantly shifting. There is nobody to hold accountable. It is just an agreed upon point by everybody in this network. They form it, they shape it, they create it. That's what thought forms are, right? That's what spirits are. Maybe spirits is not the right word, but these ideas that take on a life and even a corporeal form, thoughts solidified through behavior, through patterns of behaviors, through action, made real. The universe was spoken into existence. Well, this control structure, it has spoken Satan into existence. That's how I see that dynamic. The center of the Occult Web of Control is the mindset of Satanism, which is, in my words, nobody else's. It's just a rebellion against the laws of nature, specifically the law stating that it's unavoidable that eventually everyone's going to get what they earn. Everyone gets what they deserve. Justice is the law. That's just the way it is. So now the rebellion, these people, what Satanists do, they want to slow down and complicate that process so much that the honest end up paying for the sins of the criminal. It's an inversion, right? So in the grand scheme of things, the law of justice is working as intended. But we're taking on so much of their actions, their behaviors, because we engage in their kind of behaviors, and we're still in that satanic mindset, just further back. Oh, if this sounds a lot like Mark Passio, yeah, that's basically what it is. The honest are going to pay for the sins of the criminal. In other words, really what that is, it's just being fearful, it's being lazy, it's being cowardly. That's what this powerful control structure is. And that's what the king has always been. It's a scared, lazy piece of shit. It's a person that was so lazy that he put on such a bravado, such a aura, such a persona, because he was the most fearful, he was the most deranged, that he would not be provided for unless he was controlling everything. These are control freaks. And then what you get is what Mark Passio defined as the core tenets of Satanism: living as animals, moral relativism, self-preservation, social Darwinism, eugenics. In other words, that's just a material replication of a material, emotional, and spiritual law. You have this material, emotional, and spiritual law. They try to make a carbon copy of it and make it to suit them, but only in the material, because that's the only way it would work. Because you can trap a solid object, like you can put a solid object like this salt shaker and it's not going to move. But if it was a liquid, you can't hold a liquid in your hand like this, and you definitely can't hold a gas. So they're keeping the most dense, the most turned down, the most basic of elements. They exalt those elements because they can control things there. And that is where the activity of the law of God is the slowest. That is when they can control it. They certainly wouldn't be able to control it in the emotional. They can't control it in the creative and the spiritual. These guys can't get in a cage with me or drop the gloves with me and fight one-on-one. They just would not be able to. They don't have that kind of will to live. So they're in the business of talking and get other people to do these things for them. Now, back to what we were talking about with Epstein and the way they let things go, that they released that valve to misdirect. They rolled out that satanic panic in the 80s as a false flag. The whole satanic panic was a false flag. And for those that don't know, it was when this was everywhere in the media, and it was more so like a very... So it was a moral panic, right? That there were these groups that are doing animal sacrifices, and they're doing child sacrifices, and they're doing these most depraved things, basically saying a lot of the things that actually goes on close to the center of this occult web of control. But of course they presented it as it's just these people that get together and they're corrupted by whatever it is. They conveniently took out in the satanic panic the actual structure of control, the hereditary, lineal, permanent structure of control that has been there since the beginning of humanity. So it was a very early covering of the tracks is what they did. And this was, a lot of the time was hyped up, like mainstream, like 60 Minutes type reports, mainstream TV reports of people talking about what sounds like the real thing, but it wasn't. And it was all to make Satanism sound like something that it's not. Like a very Hollywood version of Satanism, right? It's the same strategy. It's similar enough to SRA, but different enough that people are going to file it away. Anytime they hear something about being ritually abused, they're going to say, oh, it's that stuff. It's the satanic panic. throw it away with that. That's the goal. But really, I've gone on too much with that, with the Epstein stuff, and I don't want to talk about what this occult web inner circle do to children and why they do it, because it's difficult. And my point is, the every day that we do actually experience the real world, right? That's what I'm gonna finish with. But I'll close this topic with something Nathan Reynolds said today. He posted it on his Facebook today. I recognize that many folks are eagerly hoping the Epstein Files will bring forth revelatory changes. As a survivor of a criminal empire that utilized child exploitation, extortion, murder, and blackmail, one thing I've seen play out over the last decade on the front line is, in this public war against criminals, is the promises of public white knights are empty and their words prove untrue. They assure us justice is just around the corner, yet hope deferred makes the heart sick. The interconnected nature of the agents of evil and their devotion to mutually assured blackmail destruction ensures the left hand of the perverts covers the crimes of the right-handed whores of power. The victims of these crimes have been shouting for decades. Many of these courageous wounded ones sought justice through traditional routes, only to become the ones ostracized, vilified, and persecuted, all while the perpetrators relished in power and freedom. Most of the masses of public have been too riddled with fear and cowardice to listen, let alone take action, proving all too often they are still under the influence of delusion and unable to handle the truth. Seeing these abusers in positions of power taught me early on justice isn't found in their councils or courts. So when I was young, I saw justice at the end of the dagger, Geralt, and the poisoned tools of my trade. I stacked bodies hoping to stop the infection of perverts. He's talking about joining the military, which is what he did after experiencing all that. He joined the military to be a man, to kind of let all of that hatred and pain out. So that's what he's talking about. Continuing, sadly, along the way, I lost the war within and the battle without. For too long, I attacked the body of this sick serpent, never able to strike a truly decisive blow. The head of this old religion and network of compromisers hides behind mankind, ruling from darkness while masquerading as the light. This war is spiritual as well as physical. My hope and prayer is that each of you learns how to fight. I thought that really said it so well and used a lot of this kind of language that the people in my circle use, right? This is, again, I think Nathan Reynolds has the correct worldview. He sees this essentially how it is. This kind of child abuse that we talked about is extreme, right? And that happens. There's also a lot going on that is not that crazy, but it's still horrific. It's still horrific stories, child abuse all the time. Their own parents are doing it, the family's doing it. It's so difficult to try to fix that. I don't know how. There's no easy way to fix it. Anytime you involve children, it no longer becomes an easy thing, right? It's just another layer of complication. Because while it's the greatest joy in life, children, it's also the greatest difficulty, right? But my idea to help that, we gotta talk to children all the time and actually just listen. Listening is fine. Spend time with them, create bonds, tell them about how you see life, very important. Tell them that you value them, so they see that they have value, they get the attention. So then we go from that. We go from abusive to a normal childhood, right? Normal kids, so-called, right? And even here in a normal childhood, we got a lot of trauma because we didn't get the immediate care and comfort that we wanted. We never did. That's kind of the story, right? This is what is the basis for a lot of Freudian stuff. A lot of this psychology that I don't really like too much, but it's true. It's true that this separation from the mother is a thing, right? From the parents, not having the role model. These are big topics that they are true in general. The activity and attention that a baby asks to last forever, there's no way to provide it. There's no way to make the care last forever. Okay, we're not supposed to. There is a time where you kind of get pushed out the nest, or at least exposed to, being self-sufficient a bit. So you're never gonna totally remove trauma from childhood, right? But you do your best. You do your best to protect your loved ones from going out there into the cold world until they're gonna put on the fucking layers that they need, that are necessary. So there's a big difference there between coddling them forever and fucking throwing them out, like, into the crib and not, There's a big difference of having two people in the house versus one. There's a big difference between being forced to go to school, or certain type of school, or having a little bit more freedom, and then there's a big difference between that and being homeschooled, staying at home, right? And that's as children, but I mean also us, like all of us. We all have this little child in us somewhere. So we're gonna keep reacting the way we've always been reacting, because that wound has not been healed. We all got that. It's over and over again until we free that child. When we talk about shadow work, like, this is the thing. Healing the original fractures. This is necessary for all of us to do. How do you do it? By noticing and acknowledging, hey, that's me. That's me, the kid, and this is why I acted like this, right? I did something I didn't even want to do, and realizing how it's connected is because something I missed out on, or something that I wanted to have that I didn't get one time. That's what it takes, right? You're not going to go back in the past and fix anything. It's just the awareness that is the reason you were acting like that. And then it's easy to change it. So, I don't know how to tell you how to do shadow work, because I've tried. You just have to do it. You just have to figure out a way to do it. To find whatever it is that makes you not give up, that makes you want to try harder, that makes you want to actually change, that makes you just not want to accept that, no, this is just how I am. I'm getting a little bit lazy, so I guess I'm gonna do this. I didn't really want to go out and drink at the party, but oh well. Like, find whatever it is that makes you break that. Now, what made me get up this week? I thought about next year, I'm going to be 30 years old. And I spent years of my life killing myself. And then more years of my life really dragging my feet and being half-assed, being timid and not fully committed. And all of this is because of some dumb little patterns that I picked up along the way, like when I was younger. Like wounds that, because they weren't taken care of, they got like worse and worse. And then you got hardwired patterns of behavior. Then, like loops of thoughts and behaviors. And this is what's robbed me of like 10 years of my life. No fucking way I will let this rob me of my life. And that's why I got a chip on my shoulder about it. My message to everyone is to just try to take yourself to another level here. I know it's easy for me to say, because I just got this kind of kick in the ass. I got this inspiration right now, right about this time. But here's the thing, like, you got to make the inspiration happen. Like, nobody's going to tell you to do it. This is the thing, like, what I say is not even going to, like, it's got to come from you. But something like this being spoken, it's what woke me up listening to Mark in 2020. It was the same scenario. So maybe that's what it takes, right? It takes saying something a certain way. Actually, yes, that's what it is. This is what I just said. Is you just have to notice it within yourself. And sometimes you notice someone say something, and then it's not in the words that it's not the way you've heard it in your head because the actual words being spoken, and you say to yourself, I've always thought that, I just never knew somebody else, I never knew that that's what I thought the whole time. That's what you need. I think you guys need to we all need to try harder. So like me too, right? But I'm already preaching to myself. Now I gotta preach to you guys. We gotta take ourselves to another level, because you're gonna run out of time. And you're gonna run out of time. Life is not gonna end. You're gonna realize that your consciousness has not stopped existing. What has stopped is your ability to direct the course of your life. And actually, it's diminishing each day a little bit, right? So each day is more precious than the last. It's good. That's how it should be. The universe makes sense to me. But there's no fucking time to waste, because we're gonna run out of time, and we're gonna look back at it, and we're not gonna be tired anymore. We're gonna have all the time to rest. We're gonna have like a long time, you know. It's not that I don't believe that we're gonna be somewhere in this land and just be watching our body like ghosts. No, we will still be living and interacting and everything, but this life is real precious. And hey, just ask somebody who's had one of these experiences. It's like once you die, like an infinity of time and space, you experience all of it. So you're gonna feel all these different lifetimes and you know, different experiences, and you're gonna realize that you're gonna wish you'd have done more. So we gotta do more. Like you're gonna run out of time, and then you're gonna realize your life will have been a failure. This is what I've always been afraid of, right? I think that's one thing that I think is worth being afraid of, is that you're gonna run out of time, and then you're gonna realize your life has been a failure. So I think everybody could push themselves more. Yeah, that's a hardcore way to end it, but there's also the self-love side of that, right? So maybe I'll point you to Dustin Plattner's presentation about that. But this is self-love too, because this is the thing. How are you going to love yourself if you don't respect yourself? So thanks, and I'll see you next week on another very optimistic, very happy This Week in Tyranny. Thanks, everybody.
I am 56 now, and yesterday I was 20. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And today I'm 56. Time flies. And I think one day, you will regret if you don't reach what you can reach. I'm not expecting you to be the man of the match every game. I'm not expecting you to score goals every game. I want just to tell you that I think you will regret. You should demand more from you. Not me demanding more from you. Not me, nobody, you. I think you should demand more from you.